Confessions of a Film Poser!
Hey there.
Keep it.
Oh, hey there. I'm Eli.
Hey, I'm Vince.
And we're
Film Poser!
If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. We're glad to have you. Hey, I would encourage you to go back and watch the very first video that we ever uploaded on the Confessions of a Film Poser channel. It outlines what we're doing here and kind of the structure of all the episodes we're going to be doing going forward. So glad you're here and stick around. Blockbusters. Yes, once a legendary rental chain across the US, but no, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about the kind of movie that created lines wrapping around the block, audiences buzzing to see big action and larger-than-life characters on the silver screen. The father of the modern blockbuster? A man whose name has become universal. The director behind some of the most iconic, record-shattering films of all time. Steven Spielberg. In 1975, Spielberg directed Jaws, the film that became the very first true modern blockbuster. Released wide in the summer, backed by an unprecedented TV marketing campaign, it smashed box office records. Jaws established the formula that Hollywood still relies on today. High concept story, plus summer release, plus massive marketing, plus merchandising, equals cultural phenomenon. Spielberg didn't stop there. He followed it with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and the Indiana Jones trilogy, cementing his place as the filmmaker who reshaped Hollywood. And it's that follow-up to Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that's the subject of this week's ongoing saga of movies Vince and Eli have never seen because we're film fan failures. Of course, Spielberg's filmography is legendary. Empire of the Sun, Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Amistad, Artificial Intelligence, Catch Me If You Can, and Ready Player One. This means something. This is important. So why haven't we seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind yet? So Vince, why don't you start and tell the boys and girls out there why you've never seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Honestly, I don't have a reason. I feel like this was always on TV, and I think maybe just I never caught it when it was first starting. It was always like towards the middle or towards the end, and I kind of have an idea of what it's going to be about, but I've just never seen it. What about you?
Yeah, I think like the Spielberg catalog, in my opinion, kind of has worked against this movie a little bit for me. Like, I wasn't born yet when it came out, so it wasn't an opportunity to go see it at the theaters. And growing up, like the big movie that everybody would watch was E.T. I never really cared for E.T. That's never been a movie that I've loved. I'm sure at the time when it came out, it was something fresh and new, but all the other Spielberg movies, you know, whether it be Jaws or Indiana Jones or even E.T., Jurassic Park, they all have these big, larger-than-life things and like movie monsters almost that kind of draw you in and get you interested from the start. And when I was kind of growing up and it wasn't in rotation, like I didn't have a family member that was like, you need to watch this movie, I would see it referenced in things, but I never really quite understood what it was about. When I was a kid, I actually for a time thought that E.T. was like the sequel to this movie because they both involved space and aliens, but I didn't know much about it other than that, and I never really looked into it. And then, you know, kind of as you're growing, and much like 2001 or some of the previous movies that we've watched, it starts to be referenced in other things, and so you kind of go, what's that from, and look it up and figure it out. And I know it's a classic, and I know people love it, and much like 2001, a lot of people give it credit for kind of the space movies going forward. But yeah, it never interests me, and it always seemed like it was going to put me to sleep. I think I've tried to watch it a couple times, and every time I'm like, I'm good for now. It's always been on my list. I've always wanted to watch it, but it's always, I don't know, of like the Pokemon deck, of like if Spielberg movies are a Pokemon deck, this is like the Doug Trio card, where it's like, yeah, you know, eventually I'm going to have to get it to catch them all, but I'm not exactly looking forward to it. I want to get to that shiny holographic Charizard that is Jurassic Park, or that Blastoise that is Jaws. Even I'll take the Amistad Raichu, you know.
I've never even heard of Amistad, which is funny. Also, to go back to our opening, I'm a huge fan of Ready Player One, the book, and the movie I thought was okay, and maybe we can argue about that later on. But I kind of the same thing. I feel like this movie, we haven't seen it yet, but I feel like there's no character that was
no hook. There's no hook to it.
Yeah, there's no Indiana Jones to it. There's no Bruce the Shark. Like there's no character that I'm aware of that can be attached and referenced from this movie. And I'm not saying that all the movies I've ever watched are because of the references. It is a big thing, but it's not something, I don't know. I just feel like I feel like it just never caught my eye, dude.
And look, I hope we're wrong. I hope we
I hope
turn this
it's
movie on and
incredible.
people are getting probed left and right.
Oh
And we're like,
yeah.
whoa, why didn't I watch this way younger? I could have seen all this probing. But this just, I don't know. It just never, it doesn't feel like a hook. You know, it didn't feel like the other Spielberg fare. Um, yeah, Ready Player One is an okay movie if you've never read the book. If you've read the book, Ready Player One is not a great movie.
The book is
Um,
incredible, dude. And
what,
yeah, it doesn't live up to the movie doesn't live up to the book.
Well, anyway, we'll get on to Ready Player One. Maybe we'll do a rewatch of that, and you can convince me on another time. But what do you expect from this movie? What do you expect this movie to be like? Just in everything you've gleaned from pop culture, what do you expect this movie to do?
I honestly I don't know much about the movie. I know that it has to do with some giant like plateau mountain and imagine aliens. I've never seen an image of the aliens from this movie. I know that it has to do kind of with like music, but other than that, I have no clue, dude.
Yeah, same. I know it's about aliens. I know it's a close encounter. I know Richard Dreyfuss is in it, and I
Yeah.
know that because he was in Jaws, and I like Richard Dreyfuss. But I'm hoping for at least one probe scene that just changes my mind. I'm anticipating this movie, and maybe it's because I'm on antibiotics, but I'm anticipating this movie putting me to sleep. And I hope I'm wrong. But I think it's time that we send it to future Eli and Vince and see what they thought about it. What do you think?
I'm in, dude. I'm ready to watch this. I got my 4K version ready to go. You got your fingers ready?
Close encounter of the first kind, sighting of a UFO. Close encounter of the second kind, physical evidence. Close encounter of the third kind, contact. We are not alone. And yes, I did read that. Hey, thanks, past Eli and Vince. Proving yet again that you don't know what you're talking about. Vince, how are you doing? We're about a day later. We kind of compressed this one this week, but how are you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, dude. It's hot, but it's almost over.
Yep.
And I just saw an incredible movie. Have you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
You know what? Just recently, and I gotta say, it was terrific. I loved it. Holy crap. I love Steven Spielberg that much more.
Dude, I think we both watched it at the same time, and I think one of the first texts I sent you, which we're trying not to talk about the movie, but I texted you and I was like, we really need to pick a movie that we don't like because we're going 3 for 3 on this. Where instantly I knew that I was going to love this movie, and it held up, and it was better than I thought. It wasn't slow by any means. I've heard from people that it's a slow movie, and I didn't get that at all. Did you?
Dude, it's true. Everything you just said is true, and we do need to find movies that we, kind of hate a little bit more so that we can, we're too lovey-dovey on here. We need to be a little bit more adversarial, and we'll get there because there will be movies that you and I disagree on, but
Definitely.
dude, I agree. I thought this was fantastic. No, I didn't think it was slow at all. I thought the mystery box. They say J.J. Abrams writes and creates movies that have mystery boxes in them, and that's what people don't necessarily like about his movies. This movie had that. I mean, you generally, looking back on, I was editing the first part, and you kind of nailed what the movie is. I was surprised by. Made me think that maybe you had seen it and you're just lying, but
I assure you I didn't.
Okay.
I just maybe heard stuff and kind of had a good assumption of what it was going to be.
dude, you were pretty spot on. But no, in fact, I've been really sick, so I've been on antibiotics, and they've been wiping me out. And I started watching this movie, and I was like, I'm just gonna get an hour into it, and then I'm gonna go to bed and pick it back up in the morning. I got to that hour mark. I was like, I need to see what happens next. So I think that's the mark of any truly great movie, is if you're compelled enough to fight your antibiotic sleepiness and keep going. But yeah, I got a whole list of stuff that I loved about this movie. What about you? I don't know. Let's start
I
there.
took a few notes. I was taking notes for the movies that we did before, and I realized I was taking way too many. So this one, I just kind of highlighted lines and things from the movie that I thought were funny. Which,
Yeah, me too.
This movie had a lot of like small little jokes inserted in that I thought were hysterical. By the way, I realized, because I've been watching our old videos, I feel like we spoil stuff before we announce spoilers. So if you've never seen this movie and you are a movie poser like us, we're not movie posers for this anymore, because now we know this movie.
Yeah, look,
But
I don't feel sorry for you if you don't know that spoilers are coming. We set it up pretty well that we're giving it off to
we're gonna
future
spoil
Eli and
it.
Vince who've seen the movie. There's going to be spoilers, and this movie is what, 40 years old? So I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I mean, like my hope is that people will watch the first part, pause it, watch the movie, come back, and just gush or hate the movie along with us. But that actually cues me up. Before we get going, for anybody that's watching this and hasn't seen the movie, I realized last week that we're kind of just talking about the movie from a perspective that if you haven't seen the movie, it probably, makes you go, why am I watching this? So I have just like a really brief summary of what this movie is. I feel like it encapsulated. It's nothing too heavy. So I'm going to get going with that. But so Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I am going to read it. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, directed by Steven Spielberg, follows everyday people whose lives are changed after experiencing strange UFO sightings. Roy Neary, played by the great Richard Dreyfuss, an electrical lineman, becomes obsessed with a close encounter with a mysterious craft, while government scientists investigate bizarre global phenomena, including desert aircraft reappearing decades after disappearing. As Roy's obsession grows, he is drawn to Devil's Tower in Wyoming, where the U.S. government secretly prepares for first contact. The film climaxes with a historic meeting between humans and extraterrestrials, portrayed as awe-inspiring and peaceful. All right. This is great. I'm glad I did this, because let's start there.
That was a good recap.
Thank you. The opening, I didn't write it. The opening scene where they go to the place, and I missed it in the beginning. Were they in Mexico?
They were in Mexico, and it was like a U.S. military brigade or whatever,
Dude,
showing up. And I watched a few videos explaining like the deeper meaning for this movie. You cool if I share some of that right now?
Sure,
Which is something
absolutely.
I didn't pick up. So this movie, a lot of the main themes for this movie is communication, and I think last week we kind of talked about like the biblical implications of the Omen. Did you notice any biblical
any biblical like kind of subtext
yes,
or
thank you. I was trying to think of the word subtext for this movie.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, definitely in the end when they make contact and we're jumping way ahead, but the kind of awe-inspiring, like the looks, like Spielberg does such a good job in his directing, the camera movement, everything, but the performances from everybody down to the little kid.
Yeah.
Which how do you get a kid to perform that way? It's like
I watched a video that explains it. And
yeah.
I'll send it your way because it was so cool, and it like breaks down like the actual details of like whenever he's in the kitchen, and they get like those surprised looks on his face, but then a smile. It breaks down everything of how they did it. It was incredible.
But the end when he's hugging his mom and he's like tearing up because he's leaving the ship. Anyway, we're getting way ahead. So let's go back to Mexico. That opening scene, dude. There's so many moments in this movie that I'm sitting there going, dude, why hasn't Spielberg directed like a straight up terrifying horror film? Because this movie has terrifying moments that have nothing to do with horror, which is really impressive. And I know like a lot of people credit him for Poltergeist because supposedly he kind of shadowed Tobe Hooper and he was under contract. He couldn't do 2 movies in the same year or something like that. But I don't think you can give a full credit. There's definitely Spielbergian elements.
I always thought he was part of that movie. Was he a producer?
He's a producer,
okay.
And like Back to the Future has elements that you're like, you can kind of feel Spielberg in here all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think you can give him full credit because Tobe Hooper, we've seen Texas Chainsaw, and that was an awesome movie. But there's so many, that opening scene, dude, and Bob Balaban is the name of, he is David Laughlin, who's kind of the American liaison, who goes and like, he's the one that, he's the one that translates the Francois Truffaut's Claude Lacombe, and I'm reading this off IMDb, so yes, that's what I'm doing. His character,
your French is impeccable, dude.
Thank you. I've been working on it. But his reaction in the beginning of just bewilderment, whereas the Francois is like not bewildered by it, and then they go talk to the Mexican like old dude, and he's just like got that look on his face, and half his face is sunburned.
Oh, they did Mexicans pretty dirty in this movie. Is like one of the first notes that I made.
Really?
They found some rough looking Mexican guys, and I was like, oh, you're kind of doing Mexicans dirty.
Dude, what if they hired local Mexican actors?
Maybe
dude?
they did,
and you just exposed yourself.
Maybe
as a racist.
So I didn't finish my topic about the biblical nature of this.
Okay.
The Devil's Tower kind of signifies the Tower of Babel. The beginning of the movie is these humans or trying to communicate, but they don't have the form of language that they're able to communicate. The breakdown that I watched for this movie, which I didn't even think of and I thought it was great, was that it like whenever they finally get to the end of the movie and it's the tower or the Devil's Tower or whatever, the aliens are meeting them there. It's a tower where they are converging as a human race, no matter like what language they speak. They all formed to speak with this other entity that doesn't obviously speak their language, and they found a common language of music and sign language and like color and stuff. And it kind of blew my mind, dude. It's something that's like, I'm a poser, so it's like way in depth and way further than I think about anything. But I was like, wow, that's great.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I saw that. I didn't see it specifically as the Tower of Babel, but that makes a whole lot of sense. I thought it worked well in terms of cinematically as the thing that they're all like, the people that have made the contact have seen, they've all are forming this, this symbolic shape of this mountain, and it works so well. This movie was really smart. The way that it unfolded, the way that it set up, I love. Yeah, that's great. Did you read that in like the breakdown that you watched, or did you?
Yeah.
I'm not like the.
What's up?
I'm not saying that makes you a poser, because
I'm a poser. I really, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie, and I had some extra time at work, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch a few YouTube videos.
Send me the link for that, and I'll put it in the description so anybody that wants to watch that. Yeah, I love that kind of deep dive stuff. You felt the kind of religious ramifications or the religious themes, I'll say, of this movie, and you see it all over the place in something like Indiana Jones, where I mean it's blatant in those movies, but I thought.
Which, by the way, we're not like find the biblical meaning in movies. It just so happens to be back to back.
No, but I think take religion out of it, or belief or faith or whatever. I think the Bible serves as a kind of a bedrock for storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think you see it all over the place. I think you see it in movies where the filmmakers are absolutely, atheist and don't believe at all. But I think that the symbolism of a lot of stuff is what makes it intriguing. And it makes a movie like this that's about an alien invasion, quote unquote, and it makes it poetic and it makes it beautiful. And the story unfolds. I love Richard Dreyfuss. You had made a comment before that you didn't care for Richard Dreyfuss, and that really offended me.
And after watching this movie, I kind of take back my comments, but then also I think he's really good at kind of playing an asshole, and he plays kind of an asshole in Jaws, and then he also kind of plays an asshole in this. And
Dude,
then
I disagree.
It's not him playing an asshole, but he has like I don't even know how to explain it. Like, he has like the smugness to him that I just despise. But
dude, he has to be in Jaws. He has to be, because he's the educated one that actually knows about sharks. He knows the details and the different kinds of sharks. He can tell what kind of shark it is based on the size of the jaw. But yet he's up against one. He's got Roy Scheider in his crosshairs. And Roy Scheider's like the indifferent one that is caught between two worlds of, do we keep the beach open or do we close it because it's better for the safety of everybody? And then he has to convince he has to convince Roy Scheider that he should close the beach because it's an imminent threat. And he's got the douchebag mayor who doesn't care about the people of Amity and just wants it to be open because it's summer.
And he doesn't care about his family, dude.
Right. So and then he's got to deal with Robert Shaw, who is like the know-it-all sea captain, but doesn't necessarily knows a lot, but I'll remind you, he's the one, spoilers, he's the one who ends up dead in the end. So I don't think he's an asshole. I think he knows what he's talking about, and everybody around him is opposition to that, which makes those characters good antagonists. It's what makes the mayor a great antagonist. Because if anything, I would say that, in my opinion, yeah, sure, Roy Scheider's the hero, but I would say Richard Dreyfuss is the actual hero of that movie. Because he's the one, his persistence saves it. Now in this movie, and I'll get to this in my point of view of what I think about this. He is kind of an asshole at the end of this movie.
Oh yeah,
but,
I wanted to see what you thought about the
dude.
ending.
But and I'll get to that for sure. But and I wrote a whole sequel idea that I would like to pitch to you at the end of this, based on what happens in the end. But I thought that Spielberg does a great job of, much like Jaws. In the beginning of this, it kind of followed the same structure of Jaws, but the family, right? In Roy Neary's family, him having this connection to this thing that happens to him. He's trying to provide for his family. This thing happens to him completely out of nowhere. He ends up getting fired from his job. It affects his whole family. It affects his relationships. The scene at the dinner table where he takes the mashed potatoes and he acknowledges that something has changed within him, and the oldest son just starts crying. Dude, it was such a powerful scene. But the addition of him anchored to the family unit and the baggage of, it's not just about him, but it's also about his family and how it affects his family. That's what makes, in my opinion, the character arcs and the character richness of Steven Spielberg movies is truly what makes them great. Camera movement, lighting, performances, all that stuff, great. He always picks, great scripts, unless we're getting the Ready Player One. But he always picks great scripts. But that element alone, and the element of the single mom with the kid, and you're sitting there throughout the whole movie going, what's going on with this? Like, why do we need to see this? What about this kid? And the way that plays out in the end, I just thought was brilliant, dude. I thought it was brilliant.
And all that is fair. He also hooks up with the Christmas Story mom at the end. And that didn't need to happen, dude. That was a character flaw.
Listen, I'm not saying like in a moral reality, that's a douche move.
I think that was Richard Dreyfuss's idea, dude.
He probably was. He's probably an opportunist.
He loved Christmas Story, and he's like, I'm going to hook up with the mom for sure.
Dude, I think in this story, I think these are two people that have experienced something that nobody else has experienced. And I think that kiss, in a way, it was almost childlike. And they've gone on this journey together. Nobody's believed them. Nobody's understood what they've gone through. And so, therefore, they have this connection, and also, like, her and the dude that ends up getting gassed are the only ones that want to take the risk to go and traverse the Devil's Tower to see what's going on. And they buck the government. I also thought it was funny that they used corporate branded trucks
I thought that was
the
great.
government. There's so much corporate symbolism and anti-government stuff peppered in here before real government stuff. But even that was realistic to me. The way that played out, the stuff that we're seeing recently with UAPs and all these congressional hearings, and we don't really have answers on anything. People won't acknowledge that they've seen them and they've released videos. And that whole scene where they're sitting in there and they're talking to the head of the CIA or the military or whatever. And that performance is great because he's sitting there going listen, I want to believe too. You don't you're talking to the wrong guy. And there's just this great back and forth.
Hold on. Did they kill the guy with the gas?
I think they killed the guy with the gas.
I don't think he's sleeping for 6 hours and has a bad headache. They killed everything and everyone in that gas, dude. Yeah, part of the YouTube rabbit hole that I went through that was kind of describing certain aspects and details of this movie broke down the fact that all of the government cover-up stuff, they actually had their own governmental advisor that broke down that this is actually the plan that the government would have if there was contact from aliens. And then even all the backlash of kind of people questioning the government, I guess it was a big deal because this was not fresh off Watergate, but this was after Watergate. And I guess we weren't alive then, but everyone started questioning the government after that. So whenever they had this movie come out, there was a lot of people, I keep saying government, but there's a lot of people in government that were kind of frustrated at this movie and the questioning that it kind of brought on culture. And I thought it was super cool, man.
Yeah, I think people always have especially when it comes to aliens and UFOs, people don't buy it and people don't buy the government narrative. And why should you? Because the government lies about a lot of stuff. So I thought he actually handled that really well. That's interesting that an actual guy within the government kind of broke that down and agreed with it, but it makes sense. It's like, let's create a distraction, let's create a lie to get everybody and have people, you know, leave as many people as we can so that we don't have to deal with it. And you know, the third act, you know, and is just brilliant. This movie was very, very good. It's crazy when you put it into perspective that this was Spielberg's basically second big movie, and it shows you how much power he kind of amassed after Jaws and the amount of money that was made from Jaws, because this like isn't your typical movie. You know, this is something that kind of goes deeper level, and it's not as consumer friendly. You can't really sell toys off of it like you could, or merchandise like you could with Jaws or Indiana Jones or E.T. or whatever the case may be. So with that, I thought it was cool that he included Francois, what was his name? Francois Truffaut, who is a French director.
You're getting better, dude.
Dude, I think I'm getting worse. But he was a French director that did a movie called The 400 Blows. That's like the biggest kind of movie that I've heard of. I've never seen it, and it's on the list, of course, as most of this stuff is.
Yeah, my dad had that on VHS, but we weren't allowed to watch it.
Yeah, well, his was probably different. His was called The 400 Truck Stop Blows, dude.
Oh, okay.
It's a different thing entirely. One thing I want to talk about is we talked about the mashed potato scene, but when Richard Dreyfuss goes crazy, dude, the scene where he's in the house and he's breaking the windows and he's trying to build this huge Devil's Tower that he doesn't know is the Devil's Tower yet, and he's throwing all the foliage, and he's throwing like the bricks, and his family's like, what the heck? And then you kind of like, Spielberg did a great job of, between the cuts, more and more of his neighbors were coming out and watching him, and their reactions was really funny. There's a lot of comedy in this sequence that I thought was great. I jotted down some lines from this movie that I thought were great, but the one that pertains to this scene that was hilariously funny was when he was losing his mind, and he goes, he's digging out the bricks. He's putting the bricks in the wheelbarrow, and his wife's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "Da da da da," and he goes, "If you would just close your eyes and hold your breath for 5 minutes, everything will be real pretty." And the way he delivered it was like under his breath almost. But I just thought it was so funny in the midst of this crazy chaotic scene, this joke. And then one of the joke to cap it off is when she gets in the car and she's going to take her kids or her sisters, and he's like trying to maintain, but his craziness won't allow him to. He goes, he goes out, he's in his bathrobe and is like, it's all undone, and he tells his wife she's about to back out of the driveway, and he goes, "That's crazy, you're not even dressed." I just thought was such a funny line, and that's another great thing that Spielberg does is in like these heavy moments, and it's in Jaws too. You know, the scene where they're on the boat, it's right before the shark attacks, and they're telling these stories, and it's the first time they all get drunk on the boat, and it's the first time that Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss's character kind of connect, and they connect with Roy Scheider, and there's this beautiful moment, and then the like shark hits. But it kind of reminded me of that, and there's just like humor laced in to these like dark moments, or it's traditional, like the way that comedy is used best, which is when the tension is heightened, you need something to break the tension. In horror, it's a kill, or it's a jump scare, or it's something, and then you reset and you go back, or you progress the story. And in this, he does it so well, because that scene when he's like ripping, because he's like doing it, he's throwing bricks in his house and shattering glass, and his little kids are there, and he's
terrifying his family.
He's not caring about their well-being at all. He's caring about getting to the ultimate motive, which he thinks that he knows, which is like he knows it's this shape, or it's this tower. And so just to break the tension in that way was so great. And then he has to deal with his neighbors, and he runs, and he's like trying to act dignified, and he jumps back through the window. He doesn't even go through the front of the house. He jumps through the broken window and slams it shut. But then another scene that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I loved it, and I'll remember it forever. And it's what will draw me back to this movie, is when he's built we'll call it a model of all the materials that he's collected outside of his house, and he's built it, and they start on it in the scene, and they pan back, and he's on the phone with his wife, and he looks crazy, and he's like covered in all this stuff. He's on the phone with his wife, and his wife is telling him like, "I'm taking the kids because you're like, you're scaring me, or whatever she's saying on the other end of the phone. And he's trying to plead with her, and in his madness, he's still recognizing that, like, oh, I don't want to lose my family over this. And then on the TV screen, and the way he frames it is like, you have his model, you have the TV, and the news starts running about the Devil's Tower, and he's on the phone, and he's almost going to miss. It's almost like in Pee-wee, when Pee-wee's in the car with Mickey, and they hit the fork in the road, and Pee-wee's paying attention to Mickey, and he doesn't see that his bike's on the back of that truck, and they hit the fork in the road, and Pee-wee goes one way, and the bike goes the other way, and then finally at the very end of the scene, he sees it, and that's what gives him the moment, and that's what, like, kicks us off into the third act. But I loved that entire sequence, and I thought it was great. And then, like we said, that whole third act, the awe and the wonder of them making contact, and let's not sleep. John Williams did the score. John Williams is the GOAT composer and has some of the greatest themes of all time. I mean, throw a rock, you hit one of his themes, and they're absolutely epic. But this one's more subtle, dude. It's mixed into the, like, language that they're speaking with the aliens.
Yeah.
Which I thought was so good, dude. And it's so funny having these, like, oh, this movie's great, after 40 years of people, or 50 years of people being like, yeah, it's a great movie and it's a classic. And I just never saw it for what it was.
Like, oh yeah, sure it is.
And that's why I'm so glad we're doing this, because it really is forcing us to watch movies that we have, like, for whatever, we have some prejudice against. And it's great to actually watch it, because then you're like, why did I resist this for so long?
Yeah.
And maybe it's the, time of your life that you're in, maybe when you're younger, you don't have the capacity to internalize these things. But man, I really loved it. All right. Do you have anything else to say about the movie on the whole, like any sequences or other parts of the movie in the first, second, third act that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So I jotted down a few lines that, now that I'm reading them, they're not as funny, but the execution was great. Whenever they're like, when they first go up onto the mountainside and there's already people waiting there, it's like all the people are already drawn to it. They fly by, and one of the lines is the guy's like, those suckers are glued to the road. With the way that he said it, I started laughing. And then I wrote down also, I identify as one of those creepy kids in the back of the truck. Did you remember those?
Yeah, oh yeah. Dude, can I piggyback that real quick? Because there's another great line that happens later when they go back to the road. It's because the scene you're talking about is when the kid first runs up there and the mom. So this happens later when Richard Dreyfuss goes back and all the people are up there. And that same guy that says that has a line that is hilariously funny. And he says it's after the UFOs, like, go over their path, and they go down the roadway and the cops are chasing them. And the guy goes, they can fly rings around the moon, but we're years ahead of them on the highway.
It's so stupid. So funny. But the way that the guy executes the lines makes it so good, dude.
Yeah.
There was one more line, and it was just a small one, but it made me laugh. It's whenever they're rushing. It's whenever they break down the code and they realize that it's coordinates on a map. So
I know what you're going to say.
And they rush to go find, like, a map, and they find the globe. And
I wrote it down, too.
Did you? They tear it apart.
Yeah, I did.
And the guy's like, that's a $2,500 globe. What are you doing?
Yeah, dude.
Dude, it was the way that it was put in. It was so good, dude.
They're on the cusp of making contact with aliens, but this guy still cares about the $2,500 globe, dude. I wrote the same thing down. Yeah, I thought there's one when they're all sitting in the council with the military, and the same dude goes, just randomly, I saw Bigfoot once, and it completely just leveled. It took the legs out of any of their perspective on the aliens, because now he's mixing in all these other conspiracy theories.
But then also I was thinking, because the way that he delivers that line, he looks like he's so proud of himself, but I couldn't tell if he was trying to, like, one up the situation, or if he was trying to, like, throw into the mix that it's all bullshit.
Yeah, no, I just think he was like a crazy spaced out dude. Guy. And I think like what he was acknowledging is, like, those kind of people are mixed in with the people that are like real credible perspectives. One more that was really kind of, it wasn't funny, but as soon as the little boy gets abducted and she sees Richard Dreyfuss again for the first time, and she just looks at him and goes, they got him. I just thought it was such a chilling line, and it said so much. And
which did such a good job of making you question the motives of the aliens, and then for the whole movie to go through, and it's a very optimistic story. And one of the breakdowns, again, for this movie, even though Steven Spielberg had such like leeway after Jaws to do whatever he wanted, I guess the studios fought him hard,
Of
and
course.
there were multiple rewrites for this movie because he wanted it to be an optimistic story, but the studios were saying like we've never done an alien story that did not involve the aliens like trying to destroy and take down Earth. They're like, no one's going to want to watch this movie because there's no dilemma, which he did a very good job having a dilemma in the movie, I thought.
Well, and that's always the suits, right? The suits want to make money, so they don't understand like an auteur film director who's young and like who is in complete control. I mean, there's never a moment in this movie that lags or is on the contrary of what I initially thought. There's not a moment in this movie that drags. It all feeds the greater purpose, and it all leads to, you know, a spectacular ending. There's one more line that is said throughout the movie by multiple people, which is, "This means something."
Yeah.
And it's almost like, now that I know that, it's almost like if that line of dialogue, and Steven Spielberg didn't write this movie, right? So
I think he did.
Did he write it? Let's look.
I think he wrote it. He directed it. Writers Steven Spielberg, Hal Barwood, and Jerry Belson.
Okay, I'm wrong. So like it's
this
almost
was
like
his baby, dude.
It's almost like that's like a message to the studio of like, no, all this means something, and like the payoff at the end was great. You don't have to have an alien attack at the end because the whole movie is threaded with this through line of how powerful these aliens are. And that's the terror, is like, oh my God, like you get it at the very beginning, his response to these pilots and the way he's like, these planes are old, and he finally clues in like, oh no, these pilots went missing during World War II. And that's what so it starts there, and then it just keeps going when he's at the stop sign and he's almost abducted, and just everything, and I could go on, and I'm probably repeating myself. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I there are a couple moments that I will critique. They're not moments that take away from the movie at all, and it's mostly just kind of, as epic and great as this movie is, there's a couple things where you're like, why'd you do that? I don't know if you have any of those moments. Do you have anything else to say about the movie itself?
No, I want to hear what your critique is, though.
They're small. Like and there might be an answer for this. This whole the power grid goes out in this blocks of the city, and that's what propels this whole thing, because he's going out, he's the lineman, he's trying to figure it out. But then at the end, like when the aliens come to Devil's Tower, like all of their comms and all their equipment works.
Yes.
That was the part where I was like, this is weird. But again, maybe that's the point of Devil's Tower. Maybe maybe it was the aliens allowing them because they wanted to make contact, so they allowed them to have it. I just thought it was a part where I was like, that might be a plot.
That is actually something that I did think about when it was happening. And it didn't seem like there was any justification other than like, well, no, this scene, they need the lights, so it's not going to do it. Yeah,
I understand for the movie purposes, that's why you do it. And I think there's some explainable, if Steven Spielberg was on the show, he'd probably be like, well, there's a good point for that. There's a good reason. And he's probably thought of it.
About to make contact, so the aliens allowed it because they wanted to steal Dreyfus.
He was like, look, I was trying to land it, and I really wanted to get onto E.T. The other thing...
We're here from Melinda... what's her name? Melinda Dillon. But Dreyfus already kissed her, so we just took him.
We let him kiss her. The other thing was, like, when the aliens come out, like, it was so obviously little kids in, like, Halloween costumes dancing around. And they did such a good job of making it this... That's another moment when they open and all the people that have been abducted return. I thought that there was some, like, biblical allegory, like, to heaven and to, like, that kind of stuff. But then when the aliens come out and they're dancing around, I was like, oh, this is kind of cheesy. That's weird. Yeah. I thought the special effects on the whole didn't really hold up. Doesn't affect the movie. The movie's so great that it doesn't matter. But on the whole, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. So that was one moment, especially. And then after I saw the last alien that comes out and, like, signs with them, I was like, dude, that alien is so creepy and awesome. Like, why didn't you just do that for all of them?
Yeah.
But that was probably a lot more expensive.
Probably a lot more expensive, and it's probably hard to do and like not make it scary or creepy. So they're like, okay, well, we'll just throw these little girls in alien suits and have them dance around.
Yeah,
that should
true.
get the message.
And who am I to question Steven Spielberg?
Who
All
are
right,
you,
that's
dude?
my only critique. Loved it. Loved everything about it. Now let's get into the rewatchability score. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. I told
dude.
Sarah, my wife, I said, you got to watch this movie. She goes, yeah, I'm bummed I didn't watch it with you. I said, I will watch it again. And the beauty of it is the 4K release we got has the theatrical, which is what we watch. We're trying to watch the theatrical versions of these first.
Yeah.
Just to get the like what was in the theater and what was like what is canon. But this is the collector's edition. It has the director's cut, which I'm absolutely going to go back and watch. This is my last note I made. It said the last alien had a striking resemblance to Benedict Cumberbatch, and I stand by that, dude. I was like, is this alien related to Benedict Cumberbatch? Which I've always thought Benedict Cumberbatch has a certain like alien quality to him, you know?
Well,
all right. So one of the other major plot points that we kind of hinted at the beginning, and this is how I'm going to end it. What a garbage move to leave your entire family, dude, and go out to the middle of like this interplanetary system, not knowing if you're ever going to return, not giving them any explanation. They probably don't even know you went to the Devil's Tower.
No,
the wife
there's
is
no
like,
way that anyone's gonna discuss what happened there. So as far as his wife knows, he just straight disappeared, dude.
Dude, he just went crazy and disappeared. Yeah. He left that model in the middle, like took up valuable square footage in the living room.
Oh yeah.
Destroyed the house, stuck her with the bill, which isn't going to be cheap. Like, I don't care if they're wherever they were living was Indiana or whatever. It's not going to be cheap to fix. He stuck her with that. Then he decides like, "Oh, I'm going to go be a pioneer. I'm going to mac on some other chick, and then I'm not going to tell anybody that like I'm leaving." And what was there? 4 boys, 3 boys, 4 boys, and just left them all.
A giant family he just ditched for these little aliens, dude.
And so he puts them through all this trauma and then just abandons them, which leads me to my idea for the sequel. And I'm going to read it. I wrote it on my phone as I was watching the end of this. So I want to see a sequel about Roy Neary's family after he leaves. Ronnie, his wife, and the 2 oldest boys are all strung out. The only exception, so they're a little bit older. So this takes place like 10 years after the event happens. Roy's still gone. Ronnie's strung out. He's left her destitute. So the boys are all strung. Her and the boys are all strung out, and the only exception is the youngest son, and he's a doctor because he took his hatred for his father's abandonment at the hands of the aliens and used it as fuel to better himself. So the aliens return, right? And we can find like I get to this, so I'll leave this. So the aliens return, and he wages war on them. Their mom has to turn tricks in truck stop bathrooms to support the kids growing up. She has a boyfriend who's a drunk and forces her to watch sci-fi movies to keep psychological control over their relationship. The junkie sons always try to fight him on the front lawn. I just thought that was a funny detail. The youngest son, the doctor, recruits his brothers in his independent militia he forms to attack the aliens guerrilla style when they return. And we can find a new landmark that the aliens come back to, something even bigger like Yosemite. One of the brothers dies early because he has a junkie redemption arc where he shows his bravery and steps out on the aliens and they just zap him and kill him. The other junkie brother is a coward and he pussies out by tipping the U.S. government off to what the doctor brother is planning. This is all really well written. So the third act of the movie is a 3-way battle between the militia, the U.S. government, and the aliens. And of course the government takes the sides of the aliens. The twist at the end is old Richard Dreyfuss comes out of the ship and he's like the leader of the alien race. He's like the Jake Sully who has figured out the aliens' culture and used his half-baked human American intellect to seduce the top brass in the alien bureaucracy. He tells his youngest son that he did it all for him, and that if he had the choice, he would do it all over again. So this is dialogue between them. This is the end when they're having like this father-son moment. Roy says, "Look at you. You turned out better than I ever did." And the son says, "Do you know Mom turned tricks in the bathroom just to pay for my Little League uniform?" This sends the son into a rage and he kills Roy. The aliens leave. The U.S. government take the youngest son and incarcerate him. And the government covers the whole event up so nobody ever knows what happens. The end. We can call it Closer Encounters of the Third Kind, parentheses, love or lack thereof.
So get on AI and make it happen, dude.
AI, baby. That's my only hope. There's no way Spielberg's making that movie. But you could see it. You could see the motivation.
I would maybe want a different one. I would just want the follow-up movie to be a horror movie of him getting into the spaceship and realizing that the first batch was them like talking to them and figuring out humankind, and then he's in the batch where they dissect.
No, or he's like, he gets on there and like it's an end credit scene and he's just looking around the ship and then like it cuts to an alien on a table and he goes, "It's probing time."
Oh, yeah,
and then it
dude.
just cuts to black, dude. And then at the end it says, "Roy Neary will be probed." All right, dude. I think that does it. I think we've been here long enough. I think that does it for us. Any final words on Confessions of a Film
I'm
Poser?
so happy that we're doing this, and it's been fun.
Yeah.
And this is by far my favorite movie that we've seen so far, dude.
Hey, and if you're watching for the first time or if you've returned, thanks so much. This is so much fun. We want to hear you sound off in the comments. We want to interact with you. We want this to be a movie club. We want to be challenged in the things that we say. We want movies to be suggested. To start, we're watching movies that we, both Vince and I, have never seen, to produce this result, to kind of have like real time in the week. We don't see it, then we watch it, then we come back and we talk about it. But we want suggestions from you. And as we, we'll explore more and more movies. We'll get weirder and weirder, and we'll just keep having fun. So come back next week, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and let's get active, baby. Until next week, see you on Sunday.
Confessions of a Film Poser.